right, everybody. Welcome back to Off the Bench. I'm Brandon Carney alongside Maddie Kroll, and we have playoffs on our hands. Playoffs? You kidding me? It feels like the season has flown by, but we are finally at the most exciting time of the season. No more worries about whether these teams are going to show up motivated or not. Maddie, what's the excitement level right now? Are you just going through the roof of your apartment?
Yes. And then after the emotional week we all had last week, it's just for what happened yesterday, the excitement of the Bills game and all of the emotion, I think that we are all just like emotionally kaput, but now we're just putting every single emotion we were feeling is now excitement going into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. The playoff excitement has taken over, and we finally got our field filled out. Unfortunately, look, you guys don't have to check our receipts. You guys don't have to go back and listen to the last podcast. You should just trust us and believe that we picked the right teams to fill out the wild cards. All right, we definitely didn't go 0 for 2. I'll give us this. We did both at least pick the Jags to win the AFC South, and they did so. But we said that the Steelers and Packers we thought would fill out the wild cards in each conference. Turned out to be not the case. We ended up getting the Seahawks and the why am I already blanking on the other team? Seahawks and the Dolphins. Sorry, Dolphins. Yes. So the Dolphins got in by virtue of the Bills beating the Patriots, which was not a surprise. So that's where we're at. I'm not sure how much noise either of these teams are going to make, not including the Jaguars, in the playoffs. But Maddie, how do you feel about just how the field has cemented itself and played out? Are you excited about any of these teams, or what do you view for the Seahawks and the Dolphins as we head into the playoffs?
To be honest with you, I'm very concerned for the Dolphins. First of all, we don't even know which quarterback's going to be playing, which is scary within itself. And then on the other side of it, the Seahawks, I'm pumped for Geno Smith. I really am. Mm-hmm. Including me, everybody in the NFL community really counted out the Seahawks this year preseason. And so to see what they've done and make it into the postseason, I'm pumped for them. Scared for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the Dolphins, look, they get Tua back. If they do, there's been no word on this, so we really have no reason to believe he will be back, but it's not ruled out at this point either as we're recording this. But if they were to get him back, that's probably the most dangerous 7 seed we will ever see in the NFL playoffs under this format. I mean, the Dolphins, when they are at full strength, are a dangerous, dangerous team. And we've mentioned it a million times. Like, people were talking about them as legitimate Super Bowl contenders, if not Super Bowl favorites for a couple weeks there. So if they get Tua back, they are dangerous. That game against the Bills will be easily, I think, the best first-round game of the playoffs. But we have no idea whether that's going to happen or not. So for right now, we kind of have to project them with either Skylar Thompson or Teddy Bridgewater. So most likely Skylar, and that will not bode well for them. But the Seahawks, I'm with you. I counted them out more than anybody. Like, I have videos going back where I was like, the Seahawks are not even pretending to try to win this year. And that was just not the case. Like, I thought Drew Lock was going to be the starter, as a lot of people did. Also not the case. Instead, we got Geno Smith coming in here and taking the reins and breaking the Seahawks single season passing yards record that Russell Wilson held. I know he had an extra game to do it, but still, the fact he was even near it is wild to me after all of the great things Russ did in Seattle.
Absolutely insane, especially when he didn't even have support, to be honest with you. He had a couple of wide receivers that were in and out throughout the season that were the leaders in the receiving yards. And so what he was able to do is just honestly impressive. And I'm pumped for Geno Smith. Let's go.
I am too. I mean, look, I don't think either of us, spoiler alert, are going to be picking the Seahawks to win this game. Look, maybe Maddie is. I actually haven't talked to her about it, but okay, no. We're not going to be picking the Seahawks to win this game, but I would be remiss to say, we're both probably rooting for them. I think that's the most exciting result is, a little upset here with the Seahawks over the Niners. Who knows? But with that said, we can get into these playoff game previews. Seahawks 49ers, we might as well kick it off with them. The 49ers swept this regular season series, beat them 27-7 in week 2 and 21-13 in week 15. So look, maybe you believe in the Seahawks finally snagging one, or you believe that the Niners are just the better team and are going to win all 3 of the matchups. Maddie, what are you looking at heading into this game? And I'm not going to ask you who you're going to pick. I know who you're going to pick. How do you see the Niners pulling this one out, and what's it going to take for the Seahawks to at least maybe keep it close?
Seahawks are just going to have to try to come out and be very efficient on offense and then shut everything that they can down on defense. I feel like that's where it's kind of a no-brainer for me, is just the fact that the 49ers defense is absolutely insane. And though the Seahawks have been able to get the ball down the field, I don't see that happening in this game. And they're going to have to try to get creative on how they're going to shut down Shanahan's 49ers offense. I mean, you do have a rookie quarterback, but at the same time, you have just massive talent that's surrounding him, massive weapons that are fueling this offense. And honestly, what it's going to come down to is trying to figure out how to shut down.
Oh, it looks like we lost Maddie for a second. We get struck by lightning here. Oh, boy. Oh, dear. That's all right. Look, I'll fill until she gets here. We're looking forward to the Seahawks because I think Geno Smith, with the year that he's having, you never know, but he's also tailed off a little bit as the season has gone on. Look at Geno. The interceptions are kind of the one thing that worry me. You look at the first half of the season or so. I mean, he had 4 interceptions through the first, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 4 interceptions through the first 10 weeks of the season. And then over the second sort of half of the season, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's quite a turn. So he's turning the ball over a little bit more, and we'll just have to see if Geno can, kind of bounce back a little bit. Maddie, I see we got you back. Where'd you go?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. StreamYard kicked me out. It said this might be a problem on our end, and I was like,
"Oh, I would hope so." That's all right. But while you were gone, I was just kind of talking about Geno. Sort of the tail off that he's had as the season has gone on a little bit, just turnover wise. I mean, he has performed way better than anybody expected, but you cannot, as you're going up against the 49ers, have these kind of interception numbers. I said, first 10 games, he had 4 interceptions total. And then in the last 7 games, he's had 7 interceptions. So it's, the turnovers have increased by quite a bit, and it's just not what you want to see. You want to see going the other direction.
Absolutely. I agree.
So the Niners likely to win this game. But look, it's a lot having a rookie quarterback heading into the playoffs. Brock Purdy has not seemed overwhelmed by the moment at any point this year.
No.
I don't necessarily have reason to expect he will, especially with the Seahawks being so heavily favored, the 49ers being so heavily favored and at home. Probably shouldn't be nervous, but you really just never know. He's a rookie, and anything can happen. But I expect the Seahawks to win this game. All I know is that right now, the Seahawks are probably putting up Lions posters all over their facility because the Lions came through for them. As we talked about last week, the scenario was the Seahawks had to beat the Rams and the Lions had to beat the Packers. And the Lions, man, they helped out those Hawks. What a game that was, too, if you want to talk about that real quick. The Lions just saying, hey, we're not getting in, and neither are you.
We're going to take you down with us. And I was kind of very excited to see that. I did feel bad for Aaron Rodgers at one point, which I never thought those words would ever come out of my mouth. But seeing him have a little bit of compassion in the post-game presser, I was like, okay, like you are a human. You're not acting like a robot, and I respect you a little bit. But no, how about those Lions? I was pumped. I really wanted to see them in the postseason, but the fact that they at least fought until the end, I was up for it.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, of course, of all people to score the touchdown to kind of seal it, it's Jamal Williams, the guy the Packers let go. And look, I don't blame the Packers. They had Aaron Jones. They have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. You don't really have a need for Jamal Williams at that point. If anything, you should let him go so he can actually play somewhere else. But does kind of have to sting, the guy that is such a spark plug, such an energy guy, such a fun dude that you had to part with out of your locker room, and now he sends you home from the playoffs or from playoff contention just 1 year following. But yeah, the Lions put up a great fight. I think it's very exciting for next season to see what they can accomplish with the pieces that they maybe add, and obviously the pieces that they have, just gaining more experience. Can't wait for a full season of Jameson Williams. I want to see that guy just let loose. He had that long touchdown that got called back, and we know he is just a ticking time bomb of being hopefully one of the most exciting receivers in the NFL. We just got to see it in full force. But yeah, this whole scenario got the Seahawks into the playoffs. I don't think anybody's super optimistic about this game just because they barely were able to beat the Rams. I mean, the Baker Mayfield Rams that are just limping to the finish line here, and the Seahawks barely beat them. Niners should win this one comfortably, but Seahawks, no one thought they'd be here. So you got to consider this a win. Now, it's just a matter, and we'll talk about this later too, do they go after a quarterback in the draft? Do they try and maybe trade up and have a bunch of assets thanks to their old pal Russell Wilson? Talk about that in a little bit because Geno, he's not going to be 32 forever, and 32 is already pushing it. But the next game, I should say, in the NFC picture, we've got the Giants at the Vikings. So these teams played in week 16. The Vikings won 27-24 on a last-second field goal. Shocker, the Vikings love to do that. And my initial thoughts on this matchup are just Kirk Cousins versus Daniel Jones in a playoff setting. Two guys who, to their credit, have shown the ability to make big plays and be very good quarterbacks, but two guys who also just, when I think of the term doofy, these two got to be the first two quarterbacks to come to mind in the NFL. And now we get to see them head-to-head with the bright lights. Maddie, what are you looking forward to in this one?
This one, I'm excited for DeBall. I think the Giants are going to advance. And I know that a lot of people are rooting for the Vikings. The Vikings are a weird team. We don't know if they're good or they're bad because they're kind of both. But they are struggling with their offensive line, which I feel like has been a big reason why Kirk has been struggling. All the Giants have to do is shut down Jefferson. That's all they have to do, right? Is they have to try to contain him, because that's the only reason that the Vikings won during regular season. So I think that they're going to come out with a plan. They're going to make it happen. And I think we're going to see a little bit of an upset there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm straight up. I'm picking the Giants in this one. You mentioned the Vikings offensive line issues. So they did put right tackle Brian O'Neill and center Austin Schlottman on IR. Now Schlottman was in place of center Garrett Bradbury, who we don't know his status at this point, but it's not necessarily looking great. So the line is banged up. We don't know. Well, we do know probably that's not going to be good for Dalvin Cook. And with Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson being, the two most explosive playmakers on this team, if you can kind of make it where, if the line's going to struggle and you don't have to worry as much about Dalvin because you're just going to be able to get to him a little bit easier, and you could focus on Jefferson, then all you really got to worry about after that is TJ Hawkinson, who, to his credit, has been great since arriving in Minnesota, but is not a guy who's going to beat the Giants by himself. The Giants, on the other hand, their offensive skill players, not necessarily exciting when you look at it. Their receivers, they're trotting out Darius Slayton, Richie James. Kenny Galladay's apparently alive. I wasn't aware, after the catch he had this past weekend. That was a shock, but I don't expect to see him in the playoffs much. But yeah, the Giants are basically, hey, we got Daniel Jones, who we're gonna let him run around a little bit because he is somehow very athletic. We got Saquon, who we're gonna let him run around a lot because he is very athletic. And then we're just probably gonna try to hit a couple deep shots to these guys like Richie James, Darius Slayton, and see what happens. But I think the Giants, a year ahead of schedule, arguably have the coaching advantage. I'm a big Brian Daboll fan. I think they come out ahead. I think they win this one as well. It feels like it. I'm going to stick with my Viking slander that I've had basically all year and say they go one and done in the playoffs. And, the offensive line is going to be a big part of it, but we will see how that one goes. I got to pick some upsets here. I'm not even sure if this qualifies as an upset.
That's what I kind of felt like that too. I was like, is this an upset or is it not? I don't think anybody knows.
I think point spread wise, it is. Let's see what the line is right now. We got Giants. So it's Vikings -3. So, you're in Minnesota. Put it this way. You've got the Minnesota Vikings, who are 13-4, facing a 9-7-1 Giants team who is probably in the playoffs a year early, and the point spread is only 3 points. I think that tells you really everything you need to know. People are aware what the Vikings are and how just iffy they are most of the time. So I feel like this will be a popular upset pick, that is, but it's one I'm going to jump on as well. So go Giants. Got something as a Patriots fan. I don't want to say that. I'm done. I'm leaving. Okay. We talked about the possibility of this one last week. Mm-hmm. Cowboys Buccaneers. I said that this would be the one that everybody was jumping on this, upset. It's the Bucs at home. It's the team with Tom Brady against the team known for choking in the playoffs. Of course, a lot of people are going to be jumping on the Bucs here. But Maddie, are you part of that bandwagon of jumping on the Bucs, or do you think the Cowboys can hold them off?
Man, we were kind of talking about it before. I was waiting to see on if we've heard about Vita Vea. There's a chance he may come back, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I believe if Vita Vea is playing, Bucs have this. I get nervous going against Tom Brady. The Cowboys, you've just seen the game's won or lost. This game specifically will be won or lost in the trenches. It's going to come down to that offensive line. And the Cowboys' offensive line has tanked the past couple of weeks. What we saw happen yesterday was just absolutely insane. And that issue is not going to be resolved. Do you remember a couple weeks ago, I was talking about how Dak looked very uncomfortable in the pocket and he was leaving early and making bad decisions because of that? Well, now on top of already a quarterback who is questioning his offensive line, the offensive line is not efficient. They're not performing well. They can't get the run game off. And so I really think the Bucs are going to go heavy and bring it home. I think it's going to be a really low scoring game, but I think it's going to put Tom Brady in the position where he just has to make a couple of big plays. And that's what Tom Brady does.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen that Bucs offense clicking a little bit more as the season has kind of wound down. That crazy game from Mike Evans, as much as we can call it an outlier, it's more than we've seen Brady connect with Evans all year. And the fact that that's even something, a height that they can reach. We've now seen it. We know it's still somewhere in their connection, in their chemistry. That says a lot to me. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a close game. I am, however, going to pick the Dallas Cowboys. I feel like all of the times that the Cowboys have choked in the playoffs, it's been because everyone logically is expecting them to win, and they're like, we can't hold up to these expectations. This one, even though they are, I believe, favored, again, point spread wise, we've got Cowboys -3, even though it's in Tampa Bay. A lot of people are going to be picking this upset, and I really think they're going to ride that motivation and just, prove that this is still one of the most talented rosters in the NFC. This is a team that we touted as having one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they still have all that talent around. It just needs to come to the surface and, not have the coaching let them down. This past game against the Commanders, I actually think this might have been a good thing for them. Look, I know that they basically had nothing to play for, right? They were able to scoreboard watch and see that the Eagles were – they didn't even have to scoreboard watch. All they had to see was that the Giants were starting Davis Webb, and they knew that the Eagles were going to lock up that 1 seed, and there wasn't really much for them to play for. At the same time, you want to see them come out with some more energy, right? Like, that was kind of embarrassing if you're going into a game where you mathematically still do have a chance and you just come out that flat and get bombed. Like, it was not a good scene. I think that game will kind of be a little bit of a reality check, even though this one means so much more coming up against the Bucs, of just like, guys, we can't let this energy level be that dead. Like, we can't. Yeah. We need to get shit together and, go into Tampa and take care of business because we're the better football team. They are the better football team. I don't even think it's an argument. No. It's just who's going to play better. And there's a valid argument that the Bucs are the team that end up playing better. I'm going Cowboys, though.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know if you can see this or not. This is my homemade playoff chart that I made. I scratched out Cowboys, Bucs probably 4 separate times going back and forth. Yeah. It's going to be kind of a fun one to watch, I think. I truly think so.
I agree. I think that's going to be that's going to be the ratings monster, right? That's why that game is alone on Monday night, while the other games, all have something else on that same day. Everybody knows that Bucs Cowboys is going to draw all the eyeballs. Now, with that said, though, there's a game that I'm personally most excited for in these playoffs. In the first round, I should say. Chargers-Jaguars. I am so looking forward to this game. And I don't know why. You feel the same way? If you feel the hype around this game?
I feel like everybody has the hype around this game. And I've seen people say it's the battle of the hair, which I think is absolutely hilarious between Trevor Lawrence and Herbert. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought that was going off again. No, I'm super excited about this game. I'm interested to see who you think is coming out on top.
This is the one that I've gone back and forth on so many times throughout the day. And I've settled on this. The team that I'm picking to win is not the team that I want to win. I'm picking the Chargers to come out on top in this one, strictly because of playoff experience, getting closer to it. I mean, they had that game against the Raiders last year at the end of the year. That was just all of the excitement you could possibly have in an end-of-season game. It was basically a playoff game. It was. I mean, you could say the Jags had the same thing against the Titans, but the Titans were so battered and banged up, and I just think the Chargers having that sort of game last year to a higher degree and having a year to sit on it is going to help them a lot this year. Just a team loaded with veterans, and I feel like I'm just picking them by a little bit. It's funny because I think the Jags have the coaching advantage. I think Doug Peterson is the better coach here, but I just think the Jags have arrived, again, like the Giants, a year early. It's going to help them just to dip their toe in the playoffs, and I just think experience will win out. But then again, look, if the Chargers get the sort of Brandon Staley decision-making that left the starters in this past game, Week 18, if they get that guy also calling plays and strategizing and not the guy that actually has a brain, then the Jaguars will probably win because I don't know what the hell he was doing. The Chargers had literally nothing to play for coming into this game, and yet he's sending Mike Williams out there, perennially injured Mike Williams, and he suffers an injury. Joey Bosa gets banged up. Like, I don't know what this guy's doing. I don't think they deserve to win because of that, but I'm picking the Chargers by just a little bit.
What's so funny is everything you just listed is the exact reason why I'm going with the Jags. I feel like this game's solely going to come down to game management. I really do. Okay. And I think that right now you have a Chargers coach who, regardless of what happens with Peyton, like, he's made it known he's gunning for that job. Everybody in the NFL knows if he had his pick, that's where he would be. And so you have a head coach who's sitting there thinking, like, my job might be on the line. And he's already a ballsy coach. We've seen him make questionable calls on fourth down situations. I just kind of feel like it's going to be a bad call that puts them in a tough position, and maybe it comes down to a field goal or something. But I have the Jags pulling out just because I think that their coach is going to have a better game managing situation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we know Peterson's the better coach. It's just a matter of how Brandon Staley is going to enter this game, what kind of game plan he's going to bring, because if he wins this game, I feel like his job is pretty safe. It's hard to win a playoff game and then fire that coach. I mean, I'm sure we've seen it before. It wouldn't surprise me. But if he loses in the first round, like, they have credence to get rid of him, even though they've, made the wild card as a 5 seed and had a pretty decent season, all things considered. That is kind of their out to get Sean Payton in there. So he's going to be coaching for his life, basically, because I don't know if he's going to have an immediate head coaching job elsewhere if they were to get rid of him. Maybe he would. I don't know. But he's going to be coaching for his life. Chargers have, slightly more playoff experience as a team. That's why I'm picking them. But like I said, I don't fault your pick at all. I was on that bandwagon probably 3 hours ago. If you ask me 3 hours from now, I might change my pick again. But as of right now, I guess I'm locked into this now because it's cemented in the history of our podcast. But yeah, I'm going Chargers, rooting Jaguars. How do you not root for this Jaguars?
How do you not?
Seriously, like,
we're going to get into it later, but I feel like old Dougie Boy has a shot at Coach of the Year just because of the way he's turned this team around. But no, this 100%. Is going to be a fun game to watch too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Doug Peterson, he had a very low bar that he had to walk over to be an improvement as this Jaguars coach, but he leaped over it. So I'll give him credit for that. Like, he made the playoffs. But yeah, coming in night and day, man, with Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson, you don't get much more of a drastic improvement than that.
Huge contrast also.
Like, it's fascinating. You've got a guy who legitimately was in the NFL for like 3/4 of one season, and then another guy who has won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. So, kind of different. Now he's got Trevor Lawrence, who has the chance to be like a generational talent type of quarterback, and he's here. Maybe he'll show that talent, and maybe they'll pull it out. But I'm going Chargers. Maddie's going Jags. We'll see what happens. Just a couple of notes. Jags have won 5 games in a row. Mostly that string of 5 in a row has been bad teams, but they did beat the Cowboys 40-34 in overtime. And this is funny. This is a funny note too that I wanted to mention. So the Staley not pulling his starters. I hated this comment by him after the game where he was like, there's a lot that goes into that situation. We only have 48 guys that we can use. And, in hindsight, yeah, everybody's going to be using hindsight. I'm like, dude, hindsight? People were live tweeting during this game, yelling at you to pull your starters out. This wasn't Mike Williams got hurt, so why did you leave that? We were saying this before anyone got hurt. Take your starters out, you lunatic. If Austin Eckler went down with like a serious injury, or Mike Williams was serious, it looks like Mike Williams is going to be okay. He's going to play this week. But if he went down with something serious, if Herbert went down with something serious, you should be fired before the playoff game if that happened. Like, I don't care. Send the interim head coach into the playoffs because you have not earned that right at this point. So just weird wording to me from Brandon Staley. Like, it was hindsight. Yeah. It wasn't hindsight. It was present sight. We all knew it was dumb. You're the only one that didn't.
Well, and it's just like situations like that make you question, why is Twitter having a better coaching outlook than this guy who's getting paid insane amounts of money, who's supposed to know the game in and out? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense at all. Also, along the AFC, we've got Dolphins at Bills. We talked about the Dolphins a little bit before. So they split the regular season series, but the key thing to note there is that Tua played in both of those games. They basically split it where each team won the game that was played at their home turf. And now we've got a situation where Tua's status is very unclear. We don't know if he's going to be able to play. We've heard nothing to suggest that he is to this point, and we kind of just have to assume he continues to be out unless we hear otherwise. Just kind of how this concussion thing works. But we've also seen people return from concussions, after a week or 2 weeks of absence. So really, really hard to tell. Not worth, in my opinion, predicting whether he's going to be back or not, because we just have no information to know that. But projecting this game, if it's Skylar Thompson at the helm, the Bills are going to blow this team out. Man,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be pretty. I mean, the Bills are clicking at the absolute right time. I think Tony Romo noted this on the broadcast, because I, as a Patriots fan, I was watching this Bills Patriots game very closely. Tony Romo noted that Josh Allen had that elbow injury that we never really knew exactly what the extent of it was, but you could just see he wasn't playing like himself. He's back. Josh Allen is back. Some of these throws that he was making against the Patriots, against a pretty good secondary, just diming guys up, and he looks 100% back. And that Josh Allen is the guy that can win the Super Bowl very easily. So I think the Bills just blow out the Dolphins here if Tua's not out there. It's going to be a bloodbath.
I agree 100%. 100%. I hope they take this opportunity to get Shaq Lawson off the edge and rush home, because there's a good chance that they're going to be facing the Chiefs as we go forward. Not to kind of give away my bracket pick, but I mean, the Chiefs are the one reason probably why they went out and they got Von Miller, is to be able to stop those third down situations. And I really hope that we at least see Shaq try to get himself prepared for the upcoming game. So I'm hoping that we're going to see those guys get home a lot more in this game.
Yeah. I think, this one's not going to be particularly close if Skylar's out there, but that's all right. That's what we kind of expected. The Dolphins, what more can you say about them? I mean, they look great when Tua is there. They look awful when he's not. That's not a surprise. Yeah. So going into next year, you just have to wonder, with Tua sort of being so prone to these concussions, what are they going to do? Because you've seen these suggestions that I really just don't think it's people's place to say this kind of thing, but they're like, oh, Tua should retire and all this stuff. The Dolphins are going to have a lot to think about this offseason, because they can't keep having this happen. And for Tua's health, he's got to figure out what's best for him. I'm not going to say he should retire. That's going way too far for a decision that is completely up to Tua and his family and the team and all that. But it's going to be an interesting spot for the Dolphins as they head into probably also a one-and-done playoff scenario, and then an early offseason, earlier than we would have thought.
What about the other AFC game we have going on? Ravens.
The final AFC game of the first round. We've got the Ravens at the Bengals. So, man, the storylines around this one heading into this past week, there was a lot going on. We had a big coin toss controversy. So if the Ravens had won this game, the regular season game against the Bengals in week 18, there would have been a coin flip for who had home field advantage. Ultimately, maybe we probably made too much of that and we're worried about nothing, because the Bengals, who are arguably the hottest team in the AFC, all they had to do was beat Anthony Brown at quarterback. So, not exactly the tallest task. The Bengals did come out on top, but it would have been interesting if that came to pass. And for anybody unaware, the reasoning for that coin toss would have been the two teams would have had the same number of wins, but the Bengals would have had a half game better record because they didn't face the Bills. They're like, that's not really fair. If you have the same number of wins and the Ravens swept you, which would have been the case if the Ravens won, then you kind of got to, have some leeway here, which I do understand. Didn't come to pass, doesn't matter. Joe Mixon was like, screw that coin. That his celebration was amazing, pulling an actual coin out of his sock when he scored a touchdown and flipping it in the end zone.
That was so cool.
The reports that the Bengals were livid about the coin thing shows me that was probably true. If that was a planned celebration, he's like, man, screw that. That's stupid. Like, no, take this coin instead. We're going to win this game. You're not going to be able to talk about it. But let's look at their past two matchups. So the Ravens won 19-17 in week 5. They had Lamar Jackson. The Bengals won 27-16 this past week. Obviously the Ravens did not have Lamar Jackson. And the Bengals are coming into this game having won 8 in a row. There's so many factors going into this game that I think it might be the most interesting one from just sort of piecing things together perspective, and we have to wait on information as the week goes along to make a real pick. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. We record on Monday afternoon, so we're going to make a pick regardless. But there's a chance that Lamar Jackson's back. We don't know. Alex Kappa got carted off the field with an ankle injury, so the Bengals losing yet another offensive lineman. His outlook is not optimistic, and the Bengals are already down Lyle Collins, so their line is struggling. This is why Maddie.
Sad.
It's bad. And this is why, Maddie, before the podcast started, I was talking to you and I was like, I thought about picking the Ravens in this one because the Ravens' outlook in this game comes down strictly to Lamar's health. Now, Lamar has not played for several weeks now. It's impossible to know how healthy he is. I think it's fair to expect a level of rust regardless of how healthy he is. But if he comes out and, this past week against the Bengals was just maybe he could have played, but get that extra rest so that you can be full strength in the playoffs. If that was the case and he's basically full strength in the playoffs, I will not be surprised in the slightest if the Ravens win this game with how well their defense has been playing and how banged up the Bengals O-line is. But to play it safe right now, because I don't know if Lamar is going to play and we won't know how healthy he is probably until we see him on the field, I am going to pick the Bengals, who have won 8 in a row and are arguably the hottest team in football, just because it feels like the responsible pick. Do you feel the same?
I feel the same. I will say if Lamar Jackson does happen to start, I think that the Ravens could pull this out. And what a storybook ending for Lamar Jackson whenever he's trying to go into his contract negotiations at the end of the season to say, hey, listen, Ravens aren't anything without me, obviously, because I come back and I win first round of the playoffs. It's just going to be a huge leg for him to stand on. We'll see what happens. But if Lamar plays, I think there's a good chance that the Ravens have this. Like you said, the right side of that line, a little bit weak. But if that's not the scenario, we're going with the Bengals. And as of right now, Bengals are the better pick.
Right. I mean, we saw what the Ravens can do with a healthy Lamar. Not only did they beat the Bengals early in the season, and in fairness, the Bengals hadn't hit their stride yet. They were still kind of figuring things out with a revamped offensive line. But the Ravens themselves had somehow one of the more explosive offenses in the league, even though it was basically just Lamar and Mark Andrews connecting every 5 seconds. That 5 minutes is probably underselling it. So, if you can get back to that with a healthy Lamar, that's awesome. And can't forget J.K. Dobbins as well. J.K. Dobbins, coming off of that major injury, was very sluggish to open the year. And then he got that knee cleanup procedure and has ripped off a couple of 100-yard games since. He's looked like a completely different player. So we have yet to really see this offense at full capacity. And if we get it, again, it won't be, I don't think there's any way it's 100% Lamar Jackson, but if you can get a mostly healthy Lamar with the healthiest J.K. Dobbins you've probably ever had other than before the injury, I just won't be surprised if the Ravens win this game. It's one of those that I reserve the right to change my pick on this depending on reports as the week goes on. But
I agree with that.
People need to watch out. People really need to watch out for this one. I think every year in the playoffs, things don't go chalk. There's always that one upset that nobody was expecting it. And at the end of the day, the Bengals are the 3 seed. This won't be a game that you look back on in the future and you're like, oh my God, the Ravens pulled off this major upset. It just feels like that right now because of the way these two teams are trending. But This is a dangerous one. The Bengals drew a potentially very tough matchup if Lamar Jackson is out there. So we will have to see how this one goes.
One more thing that I want to point out, because I noticed this yesterday whenever I was watching the game, the Ravens offensive line has improved so much to the point where they are now pulling right guard over and they're manipulating them to go to the second level, like what we see the Eagles do for people who aren't familiar. What that does is that opens up the possibilities for almost triple the run game opportunities. So if they're in read situations, these guards now are showing that they're athletic enough to get up, get around without penalty. And that's going to be a game changer in the red zone. Mark my words, especially when you have the Ravens who run Pat Ricard, you have a fullback, you have Mark Andrews. Both of those guys are huge guys that we've seen who can either block, Mark Andrews not so much, but either way, they're going to be able to get in the end zone as targets after a block. And if we see this offensive line continue to play athletically like what I saw yesterday, it's going to be really hard to stop once they're down the field, which makes run game, those short passes, I think that it's going to improve their red zone offense a lot. So yeah, Lamar Jackson in there, it would be a force to be reckoned with, especially I could see him running in for a couple of touchdowns there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't forget that the Ravens have arguably the most dangerous weapon in the entire game of football, Justin Tucker. I mean, if this game comes down to a field goal, this dude's good from about anything under 70. And we could even talk about maybe 70, 71, honestly. So this will be an interesting one. The Ravens, I love how differently these teams are built too, because you've got the Ravens with, pocket passing Joe Burrow and arguably the best receiving core in the league, at least one of. And then you've got the Ravens with Lamar Jackson and his receivers are Demarcus Robinson and James Prochet and Sammy Watkins, who they plucked off the street. Like, the dichotomy of these two offenses is amazing. And with both of them being such good teams when fully healthy, it's just funny to see. And it'll be awesome if we can actually get two relatively full strength Bengals Ravens teams against each other this weekend. So this is the one to watch. This is the one that I think has the possible upset potential that people aren't really talking about. Everybody's talking about Bucs, Cowboys, and these other games, but this is the one that got my eye on this one. So we made our first round picks. I want to go through our overall picks. So we're going to hold ourselves to this, although I did say I'm reserving my right to change my Ravens pick. But this is our full NFL playoff bracket prediction. Maddie, do me the honors of going first and telling me everything up through your Super Bowl champion.
Okay, I'm not going to go back through the first round just because I feel like everybody can kind of remember them. But we'll start with the NFC. I have Giants facing the Eagles. Eagles are winning that one. I'll go down and I have Bucs facing 49ers. I have the 49ers. So for the divisional, I have Eagles versus 49ers. I have Eagles winning that. And then on the opposite side for the AFC, I have Jags, Kansas City. KC wins that one. And then Bengals, Bills. I think that will probably come down to maybe like a field goal situation. But I feel like the Bills are like, they have so much to play for right now. I think that's going to be a huge motivating factor. So I have them picked for that reason, which gives us Kansas City and the Bills. This was one of the hardest ones I had to choose, is who's going to be going through.
Neutral site game if it comes to pass. Neutral site.
Yes, I want the Bills to win so bad. So I'm going to have, for Super Bowl this year, Rihanna is going to be singing to the Eagles and the Bills, and I cannot wait.
Who you got winning it? Who's winning the Super Bowl?
The Eagles.
Okay. All right. So Eagles, Bills is, I would say, what was probably the most popular Super Bowl pick as the season went on. You had all these tweets about the society's infrastructure cannot handle the Eagles and Bills fans in the same place. Like, Arizona needs to get ready if that's the matchup. So I think that is fair. It's kind of tailed off a little bit, it might still be the most popular pick, but there's so many other options now. The Bengals have gotten hot. The Chiefs have taken the 1 seed.
I was going to say the Chiefs are the ones I think everybody expects to be in.
Yeah, the Niners look great. So I'll get to my picks. So there's some differences here. So I've got, in the divisional round, first of all, I had the Chargers over the Jaguars. So I've got Chargers versus Chiefs. Maddie, call me crazy for spicing up my bracket with this specific game. I'm picking the Chargers over the Chiefs.
Woo! I love that pick.
The Chargers have played the Chiefs twice this year, obviously division rivals. They've lost both games by 3 points. I feel like they're due. I feel like their offense can hang with the Chiefs. I feel like their offense has better weapons than the Chiefs does. The Chiefs are just better at working with what they have. I mean, Travis Kelce is the best offensive weapon on either team, but Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, you can't argue that weaponry right there either. I'm picking the Chargers over the Chiefs. Screw it. The Chargers were my team that, like, as soon as we hit last year's offseason and people were asking me what my Super Bowl pick was going to be for the following year, obviously so early to make that pick. But my pick was Chargers Buccaneers. I thought the Chargers would take a huge step forward, and I thought the Bucs would just basically remain on top. That didn't happen. So whatever. But Chargers, a team that's just close to my heart that I want to see keep improving, even though I like the Jaguars more because they're more fun to root for. I'm going to pick the Chargers to make a little bit of a run here. So I'm going with them over the Chiefs. Bengals versus Bills. I'm also going with the Bills. I think they're riding so much momentum right now. And then you've got Bills versus Chargers in the conference championship. Not going to ride the Chargers all that far. I'm going to go with the Bills to reach the Super Bowl. In the NFC divisional round, we've got Giants versus Eagles. I've picked the Eagles to win that one. And then I've got Cowboys versus Niners. Got the Niners winning that one. So conference championship, 1 seed versus 2 seed, Eagles versus Niners. I am going with the Eagles. And then for the Super Bowl.
That shocks me, to be honest.
Really?
I thought you were going to go Niners.
No, see, it's so tough. I talked earlier about Brock Purdy, being a rookie and being on such a good team and being in a playoff scenario where, his team is one of the favorites. A rookie quarterback has never won a Super Bowl. I'm not banking on it happening. If it was going to happen, would it be with this 49ers team? Yeah, probably, because we've talked about it many times how this is probably the least pressure-filled quarterback situation of any good team in the NFL because Kyle Shanahan just makes it so easy on the quarterback. And Brock Purdy, to his credit, has just done what you have to do, which is not mess it up by yourself. So he's held strong. I think he deserves strong consideration for Offensive Rookie of the Year, even though he's really only played half the year. But I think eventually being a rookie is just going to hurt him a little bit. This all hinges on Jalen Hurts' health as well, because if Jalen Hurts is truly really hurt, I mean, Sirianni said that Jalen was struggling against the Giants, like he was in a lot of pain. Hopefully the bye will get him rested up because if he's not fully healthy, then this is a different conversation. But I'm hoping that he's at least close to fully healthy and sort of just the veteran leadership and poise of a guy like Jalen Hurts, who's played in national championships in college and has been in the NFL for it's not his rookie year. I'm going to go with the Eagles in that one. So we've got the same Super Bowl matchup, Bills, Eagles, but I'm picking a different champion. I'm going with the Bills to take down the Eagles. I think the Bills, again, I said earlier, Josh Allen hitting his stride at the right time, and not to make light of this and make it be part of the situation, but the DeMar Hamlin situation has, I really think, added extra juice to this team. DeMar, thankfully, released from the hospital a few hours before we started recording this podcast, but I feel like that's going to be even more of an extra push. Like, they are going to be fighting for that dude, and it's going to help an already great playoff team go even further. And I think the Bills will win this Super Bowl.
If we make it to the Super Bowl and it's an Eagles-Bills showdown, I feel like nobody can lose. I think that whoever wins, as a country, as football fans, I think we're all going to be incredibly excited. Yeah,
I agree. And I mean, you look at this time of year, you get the teams. It's smart to pick the teams that are hot at the right time, and I think that's what the Bills are. The Eagles are less so, but that's because they've been without Jalen Hurts. If you were to just go with strictly the teams that were hot at the right time, it's probably the Niners and the Bills, because the Niners have not lost a game since Brock Purdy took over. Brock Purdy is undefeated. Brock Purdy has an argument for being the greatest NFL quarterback of all time already because he still hasn't lost a game. Kidding, but you get it. Niners Bills is the Super Bowl if you're going off of that, but again, the rookie quarterback, I feel like, is a mitigating factor to that part of it. So Eagles, Bills take them down, and man, that would be an awesome Super Bowl to watch. Like, I so heavily looking forward to that. I hope we get it, but there's so many combinations that would make incredible Super Bowl matchups this year.
Absolutely.
I feel like we really can't lose unless you get some sort of poorly timed injury between the AFC title game or AFC NFC title game and the Super Bowl. As long as you get some full strength squads in there, you're going to have a litany of great matchups that you could possibly be dealing with here. So I'm excited. That's our Super Bowl picks. That's our playoff picks. We'll make some kind of graphic up here to show you guys and see if you think one of us is crazy. Can't wait for people to see my Chargers pick just to get some flack out there.
You are too. People are going to come after you.
Look, playoffs don't go chalk. They never do. They never go chalk. And there's always some kind of upset, and that's the one I'm picking in the second. If I'm not going to pick the Ravens over the Bengals in the first round, you're damn right I'm picking the Chargers over the Chiefs in the second. I gotta find something. So that's where we stand for the playoffs right now. There are some other things going on as the season comes to a close. Obviously, you've got non-playoff teams and their futures. You've got Black Monday and coaches getting fired. Cliff Kingsbury got fired earlier today. We'll talk about that in a bit. Lovie Smith got fired. But the main thing, I think, what's up?
Oh, I was just going to say, I love the way that Lovie Smith went out. He said, I'll be taking the first round draft pick with me. Goodbye.
Yeah,
and
exactly. That's what I was going to get to, was the first overall pick. So I feel like this was kind of the biggest other storyline of the weekend that was non-playoff related. The Texans gift wrapping the number one overall pick and handing it to the Chicago Bears. I love it because it makes the lead up to the draft so much more exciting now, because now the team sitting at the top with the number one pick in a fairly quarterback heavy draft, at least we've got two guys that we're pretty sure are going to be good, or at least are really good prospects. Then the team at the top doesn't need a quarterback. So what happens now? Do the Bears, even though I say that, go a different direction with a Bryce Young? I've seen that sort of speculation as well, that Bryce Young is just such a better prospect and a better passer, and Justin Fields, as explosive as he is, you're the Bears. You have a unique situation here now, poised to get one of the top prospects at the quarterback position to come out in the last few years. Do you take him and get rid of a guy who's maybe riskier, or do you go the direction of trading that pick and getting probably a massive haul from the Colts or the Seahawks, because the Seahawks just have so many picks, even though Geno's playing well. There's a lot of options here. What do you think the Bears do? Do you think they keep it? And do you think, put it this way, you think they keep it and draft quarterback? You think they keep it and draft like Will Anderson? Or do you think they trade it for a ton of picks?
I think that they trade back solely because I think that Justin Fields has proved himself in a really bad situation. Like, hey, I'm still an athlete. Not just that, but we watched Andrew, quarterback's coach, come in and he took the Ravens offense and gave it to Justin Fields on a basic level and said, hey, like, let's see what we can do with this. And then it worked. So for them to kind of already start building around Fields and for Fields to perform and be as efficient as he was in really terrible circumstances, I think that you solidify him as your guy, you trade back, and then you go after the many holes that you need to fill to be able to start building this team back.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at it and you can get a lot of picks for this, right? Like this sort of trade usually nets you three first round picks and some change. So they have an opportunity to build around a guy who I'm a big fan of. I think Justin Fields should be their guy, and you just have to develop him. I understand that his passing numbers and efficiency are not what you want to see. They're down there with like the likes of Carson Wentz and other names you just don't want to be seeing as far as strictly passing goes. But he's a guy that possesses an elite trait at the quarterback position, and that's the kind of guy that you want to build around. I understand that they will regret it in 5 years if Bryce Young is playing at an MVP level, but you can't see the future. You have to make a decision now. And I think with the bright spots that Justin Fields has shown, it makes more sense to just get a haul for the number one pick, help the kid out, get him a receiver, get him a better line, and see where he can.
There's a lot of offensive linemen that are coming from this draft that are good guys that have stayed healthy. I mean, I think that just in the Senior Bowl acceptance list, there's like 7 or 8 who they only technically played a couple of years if you look at game wise, just because they were behind phenomenal athletes, but then they came out and doubled their production within a couple of years. So when you have an offensive lineman that moves that quickly, but then also has protected his body for 2 years, that's unbeatable, which is going to be huge for this draft. I just really think I can't see a reason why they wouldn't trade back. I mean, there's defensive guys that are coming out. There's just a lot. And maybe you get a couple of veterans. Maybe you even try to trade for a couple of good veterans that you know can come in and be leaders on this team.
Yeah, I mean, the only way is if they internally just don't believe in Justin Fields. That's all it comes down to. But I feel like at this point, you take the risk with Justin Fields and just try and develop him and turn him into a Jalen Hurts type of player where the passing wasn't necessarily there off the bat, and you can just develop it. Just thinking of all the weapons they could put around him if they trade this pick. Like, they're not going to have to trade back that far. The Colts, if it is the Colts, the most likely and easy logical candidate, you're moving back to what, the 6th overall pick or something? It's actually, is it the 4th? It's somewhere in the top 6 still. Wherever the Colts are, is somewhere in the top 6 because they finished with 4 wins this season. So, you're not moving back all that far, and you'll have first round picks in the future. I feel like it's the obvious move, and I hope they make it because I want to see the Colts get a quarterback too, and I want to see Justin Fields just stick in the same system for a little bit, not get Josh Rosen. I mean, even though he showed more promise than Rosen ever did, I hate to see a rookie quarterback get thrown away after just 1 year.
Yeah. Colts have the 4th pick, so you were right.
Okay, 4th pick. So they will barely have to move back. So look, I don't know what that will net them as far as a trade up scenario because they are barely having to move up. You look at, when the Niners traded with the Dolphins, they traded up for Trey Lance, but that was moving up quite a few spots to do so. The Colts will not have to move up nearly as far. Maybe it's only 2 first rounders and some seconds, whatever it is. I think it's worth it. So I would make that trade. Maddie, I'm curious what you think though, because the other team I mentioned and have just kind of floated around is the Seahawks. So the Seahawks are in the playoffs. Geno Smith is 32. Geno Smith has flashed enough that I think if you could guarantee you had this version of Geno Smith for a few years, I wouldn't mind building around him. But we've seen the non-alien quarterbacks, aka not Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, start to fall off as they hit their mid-30s or so. So do the Seahawks take this unique advantage that they have and trade up? And when I say unique advantage, I mean the pick that they have from the Denver Broncos is such a high pick And there's no guarantee that pick is going to be nearly as high in any other year. So you've got this season with very good quarterbacks at the top of the draft. You have a very good draft pick that is not your own that you can trade up with, and some other picks as well in a surplus. I feel like it's just a strike while the iron's hot type of thing. If I'm the Seahawks, I'm seriously considering doing this because next year, yeah, you'll still have 2 first-round picks again. But if the Broncos, go out and get a good head coach, which they're going to do everything in their power to do so, and let's say they make the playoffs as a 7 seed, or they're just outside it, they may just have 2 picks in the teens. It's going to be a lot harder to trade up for this elite quarterback if they have to wait a year and realize that Geno might be falling apart. So I am curious what the Seahawks do.
I'm still here. I think my camera stopped.
Oh, all good. Maddie visually has disappeared.
Yeah, apparently my technical situation is not going well today. But no, I completely agree with you. I think it would be a smart move for the Seahawks. Also, just strategically, the Seahawks need a lot of the same defensive players as the Bears, so it would make sense for them to try to trade there. The pick in front of them is obviously the Colts, who don't need anything that the Bears need. And so strategically, it would be better to try to negotiate a deal with the Seahawks and move to that position.
Yeah, I think Seahawks and Colts make a ton of sense here for honestly different reasons. The Colts are looking for a guy to start for them day one. The Seahawks going to be a team that, they go out and get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud and may not have to play him year one. I mean, it sounds crazy with how great of a prospect they are, but we've also seen that might be the best route sometimes, is to let a guy sit for a year, even if he is as high profile as a prospect as a Young and a Stroud are. The game moves very quickly at the NFL level. So if you can let a guy adjust to that, on the bench for a little bit or with some reps sparingly here and there, rather than just throwing him into the fire, sometimes that's the best bet. So I would be curious to see if the Seahawks make a push here just because of the surplus of picks and the opportunity that they have, a unique opportunity. Maddie, I put down end of season awards on here, but I feel like this will take a little too long. It's something to think about, but we're talking about playoffs here. So end of season awards, not necessarily important at this moment. We're waiting to see who wins these playoff games. You agree?
Yes.
Yeah, so we will talk about that in the weeks to come. Hopefully we get to it before they're actually announced. See, this is the problem with recording only once a week. If we had another episode tomorrow, end of season awards the whole day, and we would just rip them, but we'll get to them eventually. I wanted to get to some pertinent viewer questions that are about both the playoffs and not. So first, we've got outside of the AFC top 3, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, who has the best chance of winning the conference? So who has the most likely path or best chance to actually reach the Super Bowl out of the top 3 seeds in the AFC? Who are you going with?
To be honest with you, on paper, it's the Chiefs, but I feel like the Bills have the best shot. Like we talked about the momentum, the heart.
Well, no, outside of the top 3.
Outside of those.
We're looking underdogs here. We're looking for some long shots.
To be honest with you, best shot would probably be Jags, I guess, for me.
Damn. All right. We're riding the Doug Peterson train. Jaguar Super Bowl would be so cool. God, I want that so bad. Jaguars winning the Super Bowl would be so cool, but I think we're a little early on that. But
Chargers?
I'm not going to go Chargers. I'm going to go Ravens for this. I'm going to go Ravens because, again, if we have that health, if everything works out, I think they are a very strong team. And that's another team that at times I thought, had a very good Super Bowl chance. I'm talking during the offseason, just looking at the personnel they had heading into the year and the experience that they had and the coach that they have. I mean, Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in the NFL. So I think if this is a fully healthy team, they could go on a run, but the chances that it's fully healthy probably just aren't great. I'm going to go with them, though. I feel like that's the best option. And you know what? Just for posterity's sake, he didn't ask about it, but who would you say in the NFC outside of the top 3 seeds, which is Eagles, Niners, and Vikings, I guess. I mean, Cowboys have the 3rd best record out there, but
I think, honestly, you have to go Cowboys. Cowboys.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the bottom of the NFC is a little weaker than the bottom of the AFC as far as the playoffs are concerned. The Seahawks are a fun team. I did say that they can be a dangerous team, but ultimately not as dangerous as like a healthy Dolphins team or a healthy Ravens team. So NFC, yeah, I think it's the Cowboys. God, maybe they can string some things together. The fact that we have to even talk about them as a possible playoff underdog just shows that they have shown so many holes this year. Like they should be a favorite based on the talent that they have. And yet here we are talking about like, yeah, maybe if we eliminate these other three options, we can go with the Cowboys.
Sunday.
Any given Sunday, absolutely. So Cowboys, we'll see if they can even win one game. I'm not sure. I'm picking them to, but got a pit in my stomach about that. And then the other question, how many quarterback / head coaching changes will there be this offseason? This question coming from Zach Daniels. So I did some research about the head coaching situation. QB is a little harder because like you've got all these situations where like the Commanders with Sam Howell, what are we saying is a quarterback change for them coming into next year? Is it anybody other than Howell? Is it anybody other than Wentz? Like obviously that's going to be a change. So I feel like we should just focus on the head coaching part of this. So I compiled for the last 5 years how many head coaching changes we've had. In 2022, we had 10, 2021, 7, 5 in 2020, 8 in 2019, and 7 in 2018. So other than the COVID year, which I feel like teams were just trying to not disrupt things any more than they already were. We knew what we were heading into that season. Maybe that's what led to some fewer coaching hires / fires. You're generally between 7 and 10 coaching changes in a given year. The coaches that are already either fired or have been dealing with interim situations, we've got the Texans, fired Lovie Smith. Cardinals, fired Cliff Kingsbury. Panthers have Steve Wilkes as an interim coach. Broncos have Jerry Rosberg. Colts have Jeff Saturday. And the Commanders, this is not an interim one, but it's just a guy who I feel like is as good as gone, have Ron Rivera. So that you're dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we've got the guys that are like maybes. I compiled a list that is Sean McVay, might step down. A lot of rumors about it. Mike McCarthy. Here's the thing. I feel bad about this one because Mike McCarthy has gotten the Cowboys 12 wins in back-to-back seasons for the first time since the 90s for the Cowboys. I also just think if he were to lose to the Bucs, he's on the hot seat. He just is, because this is a team that could maybe attract a Sean Payton or a Harbaugh or something, and they may just be looking to make a change. Jerry Jones, he's crazy. He'll be unsatisfied. Then you've got Brandon Staley, also a guy in the playoffs, but if he were to lose his first game, arguably on the hot seat, very heavy Sean Payton rumored team if that were the case. Dennis Allen, Saints fans are basically calling for his head. I would be kind of surprised if he was there next year. And then Todd Bowles, this team has 5 less wins than it did last year, so he might be a one and done with the Bucs. How many coaching changes do you see, Maddie? And out of this list, I mean, do you agree with all the ones that I said are basically locks or are interim situations? And then out of the other maybes, how are you feeling about how many we end up with?
Man, to be honest with you, I agree with most of it. It's not sounding like McVay's going to come back. To be honest with you, I think what that's going to come down to is figuring out what's going to happen with Stafford over the offseason, what he decides he's going to go with. But that Rams team, they're really going to have to essentially just rebuild at this point. There's so many guys that are injured. It's going to take a lot to kind of bring back. And after this exhausting of a season and what he's saying, it sounds like he wants to move into the media portion of the game. So I agree with that one. Mike McCarthy, I thought that it was a done deal after we saw the last Cowboys loss last season. It was a game management loss is what it came down to. And so for me, I was shocked that Mike McCarthy was given this opportunity this year. I don't feel like the Cowboys have been very efficient. Like they've won games, absolutely, but they just haven't, from just the X's and O's point of view, they haven't been consistent. The game management hasn't gotten better, and there's just not been enough improvement to be able to keep that around. The other side of that is you have Jerry Jones, who, like you mentioned, is absolutely crazy, and nobody can predict what he wants to do or what he's going to do. Mike McCarthy's in his pocket. So when you have somebody there that is going to listen to what you want, it's kind of hard to get rid of. Like you mentioned with Brandon Staley, if he gets this playoff win, going to be a lot harder. I think that he'll be able to keep his job, but without that, I think there's a good shot that he's on the block. Todd Bowles, that's going to be a big hit for the Bucs. I think it kind of just what's going to depend on his situation is going to be if Brady stays and then how they perform in the postseason.
Yeah, it could be just a blow up everything type of deal for the Bucs, to be honest. If Brady leaves, you almost wonder if they'd bring in a new head coach or if they would just let Bowles kind of babysit a team that has to rebuild. I mean, we saw it with Lovie Smith, which I think they did him a little dirty. I mean, what the hell was the guy supposed to do with that roster? I think he did as much as he could.
Yeah, and to like it just doesn't make sense from a business point of view either. Everybody talks about the NFL as such a business minded league, but at this point it's just like the Texans organization, what the hell are you doing? Because you are now paying because they were one and done 2 years in a row. So now they're paying two coaches already
Yeah.
insane amounts of salaries while they're just sitting at home not doing anything. I
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with the Texans, but that was a bad decision, I feel like, with Lovie Smith.
These teams make some crazy decisions coaching wise. Now, look, Cliff Kingsbury was not a surprising fire, but the fact he got an extension before this year, when we all knew that he would be on the hot seat, like performance related, he's on the hot seat unless they had to at least make the playoffs this year for his coaching career to continue in Arizona. Yet they gave him an extension. Just weird to me. Teams seem to be irresponsible with coaching contracts. But back to the original question, how many coaching changes there's going to be? I think we're going to be on the higher end of this 7 to 10 range that we've seen in the past 5 years. So Texans will have a new one. Cardinals will have a new one. Panthers, I give Steve Wilkes a 50-50 shot of sticking around as the head coach. He's done a good job. He's made them competitive. I would like to see him stay. So for now, for my projection, I'll say that he just keeps the job. Maybe you count that as a change. I don't know because they already got rid of Matt Rule. Broncos, Jerry Rossberg will not be their head coach. Jeff Saturday will not be the Colts head coach. No. And I think Ron Rivera's gone. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off of that. We'll count McVay, 6. I'll say Dennis Allen, 7. And then you got Staley, McCarthy, and Bowles. I'll say 2 of the 3 go. I don't know which 2. I'm just going to say we end up with 9. I'll go with 9. It feels like a higher end of the coaching changes this year. And then you got a bunch of candidates who are going to fill those roles. It's going to be interesting because, the coordinator route, teams might be weary now with Nathaniel Hackett and watching that dumpster fire. You got to be a little pickier with who you're getting here. Granted, he was probably only hired to try and get Aaron Rodgers. And then once he didn't come there, they were like, well, shit. But there's going to be some fun names popping up here. You got Ben Johnson on the Lions. Like that one's going to be a popular. The hook and ladder play that they ran against the Packers in crunch time. This man's a lunatic, and I want to see him. I mean, I guess it's the same purpose if he stays with the Lions, but I want to see him more in the spotlight.
Did you rewind that?
I did not.
I did. I had to see it again. I kept waiting for it to pop up on Twitter, and I was like, I can't wait. I got to rewind it.
I was on a plane. I couldn't rewind it. But yeah, this is the mind that is running hook and ladders in a sort of a do or die game. Yes, they had nothing to play for, but they badly wanted to keep the Packers out of the playoffs. So that is something to play for. That same guy that called up the Penei Sewell catch, like he's awesome. Might get some head coaching looks, probably will. Got Kellen Moore, who will probably get looked at. Just a bunch of these names that'll be interesting. I personally just want Cliff Kingsbury as the Patriots offensive coordinator. That is my wish for this offseason because anything is better than Matt Patricia. And I still think he has a lot to offer as an OC, Kingsbury, that is. Maybe not as a head coach. So
I think he would thrive, honestly, in New England. I think that anything as far as I don't even know how to say this. To be honest with you, Kyler Murray is a dramatic little twit. He just is. And that's hard to coach. He had no control over that locker room because it was the Kyler Murray show who was not on the right path. So stepping into an organization that has a ton of structure that's known for that, I just feel like he would thrive after coming from such a chaotic situation in Arizona.
Yeah, and I think it couldn't hurt the Patriots locker room either to have sort of an injection of, Cliff seems to be a personable guy. Whatever he succeeded or didn't succeed as head coach, seems like a personable dude. Might be a little bit more of a difference compared to Bill Belichick. I mean, Patricia is just a Belichick disciple. I feel like gives off the same exact vibe. So I would love to see Cliff Kingsbury as the OC just to inject some life into this team and just anybody but Matt Patricia. Honestly, that's where I'm at. So. That's where I'm at. But yeah, I'll project about 9 head coach firings. We will probably be between 7 and 10, though, regardless. It's going to be a good chunk of them. And just got to wait and see what the coming weeks brings, if anybody officially gets fired, if McVay officially steps down. A lot of news coming up. It's funny. I always get asked, like, for my TikTok and my videos and stuff, how are you going to make content once the season ends? And I'm always like, that's the best time. That's the best time.
I was going to say everything's changing. There's something new every day. There is no off season.
And I can just speculate endlessly and throw my own storylines and ideas into things. I'm like, it's honestly nicer when I don't have to just react to what's going on in the field. So I'm excited to see how everything plays out. We are heading into the first week of the NFL playoffs. We've given you our predictions. Now all that is left is to see how it plays out on the field. Maddie, anything left for our wonderful viewers before we sign off?
Yeah, if you were watching this visually, I apologize for my camera that just decided to stop 2 times in a row, but I appreciate everybody's patience, and I'm very thankful for a host who can talk whenever I just disappear. I ghosted you twice in one episode.
That's all right. Truthfully, if you're watching this visually, it's an overall our overlays are wonderful and our production team is wonderful, but Maddie is disappearing and my lighting is just the right side of my face just goes 0 dark 30 half the time because I'm right next to a window. So thank you guys for sticking with us. If you're just listening to us, then you're good. So thank you guys either way. But that'll do it for us. Heading into the playoffs, guys, enjoy the weekend of games. We've got some bangers, and let's see whose predictions come true. Go Jags. Go Chargers. I'm not sure who I'm rooting for at this
point.
Go
underdogs.
So. Go underdog. Let's get all the high seeds out of here. Goodbye. Just make it chaos. All right, guys. For Maddie Kroll, I'm Brandon Carney. We will talk to you guys next week.